Preliminary results of our investigation had led us to believe this is not a homicide and there is no threat to the public. An autopsy is scheduled for today and additional forensic testing and provide further insight into the death investigation. I'm sure you have questions.
Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Tuesday morning, the 11th of March, and a slightly chilly but lovely spring morning here in Northern England. In this video we're going to talk about the disappearance of a 35-year-old man out of Lincoln, Nebraska called Tyler Goodrich. This week his remains have been found after an exhaustive search that has lasted 16 months. Tyler went missing under somewhat suspicious circumstances on the 3rd of November 2023, and just this week someone walking their dog found him very close to his home, and he'd been there all along. In a moment I'm going to play you part of the press conference that law enforcement have done once Tyler's remains were identified. I'm going to play a part of the Q&A. As is often in press conferences, the volume of those is very weak, but the answers that the officer gave were very interesting. Why am I talking about Tyler Goodrich? Well, it's another very good moment to reinforce that despite searches, despite people doing all they can to find someone, it is very common. I've lost count of the number of cases that this happens in. It's very common for that person who could have been missing for months or even years to be found close to home, under the noses of searchers. And in this video, we're going to pose the question, what does that mean for the case of now 16-year-old Sebastian Rogers, who has been missing for just over a year from his home in Hendersonville in Tennessee? What does it mean for his case and other cases like it? So, I'm going to play part of the press conference for Tyler in a moment. I'll just give you a little bit of backstory if you have never heard of this case. Tyler was 35 years old. He lived with his husband, Marshall Vogel, and their two adoptive sons on a 3-acre property in Lincoln in Nebraska. Everything seemed to be going well in Tyler's life. He had tons of friends, he was very popular, he'd kind of moved from job to job a little bit, but he got his life in order. He'd stopped drinking. But on the evening of the 3rd of November 2023, things took a really dark turn. Marshall and Tyler's marriage wasn't good. It had turned quite sour. And there'd been some kind of fight that evening, and Marshall had told Tyler that he wanted a divorce. And apparently Tyler pushed him, at which time Marshall called 911. Tyler ran from the house. A figure is seen at 7:41 p.m. running. Now, is that Tyler? Probably. It kind of fits that Tyler ran out the back way and ran towards a wooded area. And you can see a light, and he attempted to call a friend at 7:41, so the same minute that this was caught. So I think this is Tyler with his phone, probably calling a friend, maybe to pick him up, I don't know. But Tyler was never seen again. Now, Marshall came under quite a lot of scrutiny on social media and also Tyler's family. Marshall started claiming that things were really bad between him and Tyler. And this is a post that he put on Facebook. So I'm going to read this. It's quite long. But first, listen to the Q&A here from the press conference.
Can you say if that body had been there the entire time?
100% no, the body has been there for over a year. It appears through my experience and investigations.
So was that area previously searched?
Yes. It was searched by public volunteers.
When was it searched? Do you know when it was cleared and all that?
It was early on in the, when we were doing that. It was probably within the first couple of weeks after all the volunteers got going. Yeah. Yes?
Any explanation of how it could have been missed?
It is wooded. Sometimes if you don't know exactly what you're looking for and making sure you have enough people out there. I'm sure, like you said, you had to go through a bunch of trees and doing that, and you could have just looked down because there was a branch and not seen where he was at.
Were there any personal belongings found near the remains?
Not yet, no.
Any weapons?
No.
Anything missing, identification, cell phone?
We are continuing to investigate that. At this point in time, we have not found that, no. But again, I want to emphasize, we are not considering this to be a homicide.
And was he found just on the ground near that area, or exactly how was he found? Was he found perched up on a tree?
What I'm going to do is wait until the autopsy is completed and we have a discussion with the family, and I want them to be the first to know everything we know before I get it out into the public.
Were there ever dogs that went through that area?
Not that I know of, no.
So did the person walking their dog find it, or did the dog discover it?
I do not know that. I just know that individual found it. They did not have a cell phone. They marked it, made a phone call to dispatch, and that's how we got notified of it. I don't know the exact details of how he came about it.
How deep in that wooded area were you talking about, the 77 Pioneers? Was it really
10 to 15 yards at the most.
10 to 15?
Was that an area where he normally would jog or run?
I don't know his personal habits. Certainly it wasn't a place I see people jogging or doing that. So it was about 967 yards from his residence. And it's almost straight on, as you have seen in the pictures. We're just, again, no words will ease the grief of the loss of this for the family. I am glad they get some closure. And all the friends, is very obvious he was very loved and cared for.
Interesting, isn't it? He was found 967 yards away from his home. Now, about 3 weeks into the search, I think it was Tyler's family who brought in private searchers, and the dog apparently tracked Tyler's scent across a wooded area around the boundary of a neighbour's property to the road. So there's a fire and rescue station, and then lost the scent on the road. But this was, I think, 3 weeks after he went missing. So I question the credibility somewhat of this path. And although it hasn't been released exactly where Tyler's body was found, he was found in a wooded area that searchers had already searched. Law enforcement said, well, it was volunteer searchers and maybe they didn't know what they were looking for. But when asked exactly where Tyler's body was found, the cop didn't want to answer that. The autopsy was apparently taking place yesterday, the 10th. So they might release more once they've been able to communicate that to Tyler's family. But they say there's no signs of homicide.
Preliminary results of our investigation had led us to believe this is not a homicide, and there is no threat to the public.
I want to read you this post that was put on Facebook a year ago from Marshall, because it gives Marshall's side of the story, but also it shows that someone can go missing after, let's say, an argument, or because they're feeling upset. They're found very close to home. All eyes were on Marshall as the last person to see him, and yet it wasn't Marshall who did this. So I'm going to read this. Tyler was sometimes physically and emotionally abusive towards me. After years of this, we were discussing divorce. His father, Lonnie Goodrich, was aware of Tyler's abuse towards me. I had retained an attorney and was reviewing the complaint for dissolution. There are recordings that document Tyler was becoming increasingly verbally abusive to me and the boys, and he told me he would ruin my life. He had removed his wedding ring. On the evening of November 3rd, I told Tyler that I would be filing for divorce. Tyler's response prompted me to call 911. Tyler was aware that I was on the phone with the 911 dispatcher. He was yelling at me to hang up. I told the dispatcher that I thought he was leaving in his car, but instead he ran out of the garage on foot. Tyler had a domestic violence arrest during a past relationship. He avoided consequences from that arrest, though, through a diversion program. This time, I think he was trying to avoid consequences by running away before the deputies arrived. His family was aware of his history of violence in relationships. When Lancaster County Sheriff's Office responded to my 911 call, I answered their questions and gave them permission to search the house and property. They found no sign of Tyler. The deputies stayed while I packed mine and the boys' things for the night, gathered the dogs, and left the house. Because I expected him to return that evening, the boys and I did not spend the night at home. I didn't go looking for him that night, assuming he'd return home overnight. When he didn't, I called around looking for him, but no one knew where he was at. At that point, I called 911 and reported him missing, and then called his dad. Lancaster County Sheriff's Office responded to my call. I consented to a search of the house and property. I showed them Tyler's computer. I gave them the hard drive from our home security system. Tyler was the only one who had access to the security system, so I was not able to view or show them the recordings. They later viewed the video of Tyler running from the garage and shared that publicly. Over the following days and weeks, I consented to multiple searches of the house and property and another family home and property in the neighbourhood. I assisted them by providing all of the known passwords for the family's devices so they could review our digital footprints. Since Tyler ran away, I've been focused on the boys and keeping them safe and cared for. Members of my family participated in searches. I've purchased signs at the request of his family. I answered questions of a private investigator, and I've provided all information Lancaster County Sheriff's Office asked me for. His sister Felicia and I work with a professional dog tracker at our property and neighbourhood. The tracker concluded Tyler ran from the garage, hid in the tree lines east of us, and ends up on the street as if he got into a car. That's this search. But again, is it Tyler that dog was actually tracking? It's 3 weeks in, we don't know. I have limited contact with Lonnie and his family after they falsely accused me of not properly caring for the boys. His mother, Shelley Goodrich, who we had a limited relationship with because of her alcoholism, made recorded threats against me. "I'll effing hunt you down," she said. I believe the Sheriff's Office, friends and family were trying to create an environment where Tyler would return. I didn't make any public statements or correct the misinformation that was being put out. I supported that strategy and kept the actual details of why Tyler ran away from going public. That strategy has not worked. Tyler has not returned. Due to the increasing public comments about my children, I am no longer willing to stay silent. Neither I or my children had anything to do with Tyler's disappearance. He ran away to avoid the deputies. Although he won't be returning to our marriage, I hope that he's safe and does return to deal with the circumstances he has caused. I appreciate the extraordinary effort the deputies of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office and the volunteers have put into finding Tyler. Thank you to my family, friends and colleagues. Your support means everything to me. It's a difficult time for my family, but I hope you have a blessed Christmas. So it's a very sad situation. They thought possibly Tyler had left in a vehicle. Tyler was living his life somewhere, but none of his bank or anything had been ever used. And it does appear that Tyler was out there very close to home, 967 yards from where he was last seen, and he was there all the time. So we don't know the circumstances of his death, except that it's not homicide. Is it going to be suicide? We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see on that one. But how does this relate to the missing 16-year-old Sebastian Rogers from Hendersonville, Tennessee? Obviously, a very, very different situation. Tyler was a grown man with his own family. But there were problems in the home, so much so that many people were looking at Marshall. You know, the cops were looking at Marshall, and Marshall was innocent. But yet there was a lot of blame to Marshall because he was the last person to see Tyler. So think about that in relation to Sebastian. How much heat is on Katie, Sebastian's mother, because she was the last person to see him. There were problems in the home. People have talked about CPS reports, and we know that Sebastian was due to go and live with his dad. It wasn't a custody change. It was still going to be joint custody. So, like Katie has Sebastian through the week and then one weekend, and then he goes to Seth's every other weekend, that's going to kind of switch, where Sebastian's at Seth's and then goes to visit Katie on the weekends. This was an alternative to putting Sebastian in a facility because of his behavioural issues. His behaviour had got sufficiently bad. I don't know the nature of it, but, you know, that's what they were contemplating. Seth had given Sebastian a year to sort his behaviour out. He hadn't done, so it seems like it was a punishment, weird, to go and live at Seth's and do online school to correct his behaviour. Sebastian did not want to do that. So it's possible that Sebastian left because he was upset. Is it possible that he went for a walk to clear his head because he was upset? We don't know. We don't know the circumstances in which Sebastian left. My point is that the perception of all of this, that Katie's the last person to see him, there's trouble in the home, it mirrors the case of Tyler Goodrich, that there was, you know, someone who was blamed, the last person to see him, and there was problems in the home. Very different problems, but still, Tyler left because there was problems in the home. He was fearing deputies coming, according to Marshall. Sebastian, maybe, possibly, left the home to clear his head because he was upset over something. Is it also possible that Sebastian is sadly no longer with us, and his body, whatever reason it got there, is close to home? Let me show you the map. This is Sebastian's neighbourhood. This is Sebastian's house right here. Let's do 1,000 yards. Let's just round it up. Let's round it up. Where does 1,000 yards take us? 1,000 yards. Alright, there's Sebastian's house. 1,000 yards takes us up here to Ward Lane. Not very far. Look, takes us to that wooded area. Not very far. Takes us this way. Not very far. Just outside of his neighbourhood. I'm not saying that Sebastian's body is going to be the same distance away as Tyler Goodrich is. I'm just giving you this as an example to show just how close 1,000 yards is. It's what, half a mile? And despite exhaustive searches, Tyler's body was there all along. Is it going to prove the same with Sebastian? Blaming family members, looking at a situation and thinking, that's got to be it. No, often it isn't it. Often it's something else completely. And time after time after time, people go missing and are found months or even years later, close to home. I'd love to think that Sebastian was out there somewhere living his life as people thought about Tyler Goodrich. But the reality of it, that after a year of nothing, no sightings, no contact, nothing, the chances of that are incredibly, incredibly slim. I think we have to face reality. And the case of Tyler Goodrich gives us a good indicator of things are not always as they seem. And people, time after time, get missed. Okay, let me know your thoughts about both cases in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.